Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art and Talk. Art and Talk is an online interviewing platform for artists to share their art, creativity, and passion. We embrace all the arts, the traditional arts and the spiritual arts, to bring you diverse and quality interviews to watch and be inspired by. We hope you've had a moment to check out our video library on our YouTube channel. We currently have around 60 videos for you to watch and enjoy and be inspired by. If there's certain artists or certain genres that you're interested in us presenting more, please let us know. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Art and Talk, and today we have a guest author who has written a book called The Yoga of Oz. And so we're going to find out what that's all about. So let's go ahead and welcome our guest for today, Cary Bear. Hi, Cary, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, Leslie Sue.
Awesome. All right. So you have this book out called The Yoga of Oz, and I can't wait to find out what it's all about. I looked a little bit of, into the book and the some of the contents and the chapters. But I want to hear from you, from the author, what it's about. But before we get into that, Cary, can we get a little bit about your spiritual journey and what you'd like to share with us, and then we'll dive into the book.
Absolutely. When I was 17 years of age, I began to practice transcendental meditation. And 3 years later, I studied with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was the founder of Transcendental Meditation. He trained me to become a teacher of TM, which I taught for over 3 decades. And in the last 10 years, I've been teaching a kind of a variation on that called Higher Self-Healing Meditation. And I've also been a life coach, full-time life coach since 2001. So I would say my spiritual journey really is a combination of meditation and also the coaching work, which really is called breakthrough coaching, really intended to help people create breakthroughs in different parts of their lives, from the spiritual part of their lives as well as the material and career parts of their lives as well.
Mm-hmm. And so you do coaching, you do these like one-on-one and group coachings. You're also an author, you write, and then you founded the a specific meditation. It's called the higher healing.
Higher self-healing meditation. And the reason for that is that as we connect to our higher self, which is deep within us at the source of our thinking process, there's great healing that takes place in different parts of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. All right. So we have the Yoga of Oz. And now when I looked at the contents, and let me know if this is correct, so I can kind of set it up a little bit. And then I can't wait for you to read a selection of this book. So it looks like you've taken the story, The Wizard of Oz, and you've taken the characters and you've kind of outlined them and represented each of the characters in what they represent on a spiritual and practical level. Is that correct?
Yeah, because the story, and I want to make a distinction between the book, which is a wonderful book written in 1900, but the movie is the one that's I should say, most widely known by people. That was the 1939 movie with Judy Garland, of course. And more of the book is concerned with the movie only because more people are familiar with it. But yes, it is a journey story. It's a story that begins in the black and white flat plains of Kansas about a young girl who wants to go over the rainbow. And the rainbow, of course, is, as you're an artist, as you're well familiar, the rainbow is made up of the white light spectrum. So in a sense, her desire is to experience the white light, which is a spiritual phenomenon. And so she goes over that rainbow and meets a kind of an enchanting world where she meets she meets a scarecrow, and she meets a tin man, and she meets a cowardly lion. And each of them is looking for completion. They're looking for, well, a brain, which in my book I refer to as really consciousness. He's really seeking the unfoldment of his full mental potential. And then there's a tin man who feels he has no heart. He's looking for the awakening of his heart. And then there's the lion who has lost connection to his courage, to his spirit. And so this journey of Dorothy with these three companions is to meet someone who they feel could give them that completion. And of course, as everyone is familiar with the story, eventually that takes place, and then Dorothy returns back home, but she's now in a more awakened place. She comes back to where she started, but now with a more expanded heart, awakened mind, and courage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's a great little like setup for us and understanding into the book. So let's go ahead and hear a selection.
Sure. Section one is called Getting Started on the Journey. And I quote a one sentence line from T.S. Eliot's Little Gidding, which is one of my very favorite quotes. And I'll share it with you. It says, "The end of all our exploring is to arrive where we started
Mm,
and to know the place for the first time."
mm,
And that's really what all the great hero journey stories are about. It's about a hero or heroine, in the case of Dorothy, who is looking for something and she doesn't feel that she has it. And of course, the three companions she meets also feel they don't have it, when in fact they've all had it all along. And that's the great kind of mystery of the journey itself, which is that here we all are, uh, equipped, if you will, with this unbounded, infinite, universal consciousness that is our true nature. But to the extent that most people are not conscious of that, they live without the benefits of it. There's a famous story going back to the East where a king, a wealthy king, has, in a sense, gotten amnesia and has lost connection to the fact that he's a king, and he goes out into his kingdom begging to the peasants for, pennies, nickels, what have you, because he's lost connection to his true nature. And so that's a beautiful metaphor for humanity, you know. So I'll be happy to read. In fact, why don't we start from the beginning? I quote two lines from my favorite poet, Walt Whitman, whose poem "Song of the Open Road" has these two lines: "To know the universe itself is a road, as many roads, as roads for traveling souls."
mm.
And of course, Dorothy was given a road to follow too. It was a yellow brick one. So I'm going to read the first two paragraphs from the book. Okay. Traveling souls indeed. When I first saw The Wizard of Oz, I was 7 years of age. Terrified by the wicked witch, I traveled the road from the floor where I was watching the TV to behind a chair to hide. I put my fingers in my ears when Margaret Hamilton unleashed her blood-curdling cackles, and I'd wait a while before peering out from behind the chair to make sure this wicked witch was gone and the coast was clear. 10 years after that, my witch phobia behind me, I used that same chair to sink into the silence of meditation. I'd set foot on the yellow brick road, and long before feng shui had become a household word, positioned the furniture for higher purposes. During countless meditations I would later do in that chair in my parents' home, never once in my mind's eye did I see that scary witch's face again. Thank God for small things. So I set it up that way because this story has, I mean, this is probably one of the most famous stories in the American consciousness. It's very hard to find an American adult who has never seen The Wizard of Oz as a film. And it's such a rich metaphor for the journey that you and I are on, that everyone who's watching this is on, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so I first gave a talk at the Fairfield, Iowa Transcendental Meditation Center when I was about 22 years of age, on higher consciousness in The Wizard of Oz. And in a sense, that talk was the seed that got planted and eventually became the tree that I now refer to as the Yoga of Oz Meditations for Your Yellow Brick Road.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. At 22, you were already speaking about this, and as you said, it kind of planted the seed for the tree to build to what has taken place now for the whole kind of analysis and like spiritual metaphorical look into the Wizard of Oz.
That's right. That's right. in the beautiful background behind where you're currently seated, there are all kinds of trees, and every tree has its origin. It has its origin in a seed. So that seed was there for me, and this story has been with me for all those years. So it was very thrilling to be able to put it together and allow this tree to grow in my consciousness and then spill over and create this book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Um, Cary, can you get into some of the characters and let us know what they represent to you? You know, what the moral is. What are they teaching us, and how is this all like kind of in your perspective? What what's going on with them, and what we have to in practical ways to apply in our life.
Sure. See, one of the reasons, and again, I'm going to refer to the movie only because such a small percentage of people have actually read the book, which, by the way, is a good book. It's a really wonderful book. And the author, L. Frank Baum, was a member of the Ramayana Theosophical Society in Chicago, which is a spiritual organization. So he was very familiar with spiritual principles, with enlightenment, awakening, reincarnation, karma, all the metaphysical principles that are kind of standard, as part of the lexicon of those of us who are watching this and who follow the New Age and so forth. The movie, interestingly, changes the book quite a lot. I won't go into all the details about that at all, but in a way, the movie also conveys a lot of spirituality, and that's what we'll talk about now. So Dorothy, who interestingly is an orphan. She's raised by her uncle and aunt, and an orphan is someone who's a child, really, who's disconnected from her source, is one way of saying it, because the people who created her are no longer alive. So Dorothy, at a young age, is disconnected from her source, and she's longing to reconnect to her source. And she thinks to do that, she needs to go over the rainbow, that life in Kansas just doesn't do it for her. And so over the rainbow, oh, by the way, before I do that, I just want to recount a little piece of the story because it's so significant here. She feels ignored by her uncle and aunt. They're very busy trying to make the farm work and so forth, and they don't really have a lot of time for her. So that's why she decides to run away. And so, but of course, it turns out that there's a cyclone or a twister going on, and that's a bad day to leave home, no matter what your age. So she comes back, and but they're all in the storm cellar. It's all locked. So she goes into her bedroom, and you may remember she falls, hits her head on the bed, and then she sees the house kind of rise up into the air. And one of the reasons she also wanted to leave Kansas was there was a woman in town named Miss Gulch who had it in for her little dog Toto. Toto had gotten into her garden and even bit her at times. So the authorities had given Miss Gulch the permission to confiscate Toto and have him put to sleep, which of course was terrible for Dorothy. She loved her dog deeply, so she figured she had to leave. And as she bangs her head and she sees the house go up, she sees this Miss Gulch. You may recall this scene. It's a wonderful scene. Miss Gulch is riding on her bicycle across the sky as Dorothy is envisioning this, and she turns into a witch. Da 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 da. You remember that music? It was very famous. And so what happens is Dorothy's house, lands over the rainbow in Munchkin Land and kills inadvertently this witch's sister. And so now this witch has a vendetta against Dorothy. So Dorothy left Kansas because she was not able to be at peace with this woman named Miss Gulch, only to land in over the rainbow where this Miss Gulch has been transformed into a witch who now wants to kill Dorothy. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychoanalyst, said, "What you resist persists." And this is a major principle about how the human psyche works, and it is very much a part of this story because Dorothy thought if she could just get far enough away from this Miss Gulch, her life would be better, only to discover that it got worse. So over the rainbow, she meets this kind of guru figure, Glinda, the good witch of the north, gives her a direction to follow, a path. She says, "Follow this yellow brick road." And on the road, she comes across a scarecrow, who, by the way, talks and speaks in very clear sentences, yet thinks he has no brain. interestingly. Then she meets a tin man who has, he says, no heart. And yet in the book, he steps on an ant and starts crying because he feels compassion for this little creature that he inadvertently killed. And yet he thinks he has no heart. And then there's a lion who eventually goes into a heavily guarded castle of the Wicked Witch, who has supernatural powers, to save his friend Dorothy. He finds the courage to save his friend. So these three characters who are looking for the things they already have journey to the Emerald City to meet this wizard who they think can give them what they don't realize they already have. So the story really is about these characters represent a part of Dorothy's being, her consciousness, her heart, her spirit. And they all need completion before her awakening is complete. Now, in the movie, of course, the wizard who we discover really isn't a wizard. He really was a kind of a carnival character whose hot air balloon got waylaid and wound up in a place unknown to him. He was from Nebraska. He winds up in this land, and they think, the people do, that he's got some special powers. So he assumed, all right, well, it's better than nothing, so I'll be their wizard. When Toto reveals behind the curtain that this man is really nothing but just a regular man with using tremendous special effects, they feel discouraged. And yet he enlightens them by telling them that they already have what they thought they were seeking, what they were seeking, but they didn't think they had. And as soon as he tells them that, they each gain the thing they were looking for, except Dorothy, because Dorothy wants to return home. He can't give her that. He thinks he can with this hot air balloon, but that didn't work out. And so Glinda returns and tells Dorothy, you always had the capacity, all you have to do. And then she gives her a mantra. The mantra she gives her is, everybody knows it, there's no place like home. And she tells her to repeat it a few times. There's no place like home. And just like mantras in meditation, it begins to bring her consciousness back, not just her consciousness, but in the story, her body too, back to Kansas, where she's surrounded by all the people she left. And interestingly, she recognizes each of them as someone in the journey. The three farmhands who work on her aunt and uncle's farm, she recognizes as the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion. It's a perfect metaphor for reincarnation, because these same characters who were part of her black and white experience in Kansas were also part of her, let's call it, lifetime over the rainbow. And Dorothy, of course, realizes at the very end that she says, if I ever go looking for my heart's desire anywhere other than in my own backyard, I know I don't need to go there, because whatever I need is in my own backyard. And the backyard is a beautiful metaphor for what's always with us, because the backyard represents the back of our consciousness, the depth of our being. It's always where we are. So I've said a mouthful, maybe your turn.
Yeah, well, I love the insight and the perspective that you have on the characters and then what they represent. And I love that, the three main characters that are aspects of her consciousness, as you were saying, are really just extensions of her. And then, you're kind of going into what they actually represent.
Right.
I do have a couple questions, and I want to hear, more about the book, but we have the cover of Yoga of Oz. So let's take a quick look at that.
Okay.
Give me just a moment, and I'm going to pull it up. All right, and here it is.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful cover.
My philosophy of writing books is, Leslie Sue, if the book doesn't exist that I want to read, I write it. So I've wanted to read this book for a long time. Couldn't find it, so I wrote it.
Kind of
I'd like to acknowledge Jeff Williamson, who is the designer of both the book and the cover. I thought he did a beautiful job, especially on the cover.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful, Cary. All right, I just want to let the viewers go ahead and see the book. I'll go ahead and stop the screen share. All right, as we continue along and find out more about your perspective and how you view this iconic story of the Wizard of Oz, and what we can learn from it, and apply, as we've been saying in our own life. A couple things that as you were speaking, I was like, okay, I have to ask Cary what he thinks this represents. All right, first of all, the dog Toto.
Hmm.
Okay, what do you feel that the dog Toto represents? And also, that famous, as you were saying, mantra of Dorothy when she says, "There's no place like home. There's no place like home." She's also in the movie. She has those ruby slippers, and she's told like to click them. So
That's right.
what? Yeah, yeah. So what's your whole take on that? What does all that represent?
Well, Toto, I think, represents Dorothy's instinctive nature. Toto is really the uncredited catalyst for so much of what happens on Dorothy's journey. It's Toto getting into Miss Gulch's garden that's ultimately sets Dorothy off on her journey. It's Toto who escapes from the castle when Dorothy is kidnapped by the Wicked Witch. Toto finds Dorothy's three companions, leads them back to the castle. It's Toto who reveals that the wizard is behind the curtain and is really just a kind of a charlatan, really. It's Toto who jumps out of the hot air balloon that the wizard is going to take Dorothy theoretically back to Kansas in to chase a cat. Dorothy gets out, and then the balloon takes off without her. So Toto is really, as I like to say, the catalyst. And Toto is very close to sort of totality. So Toto is kind of at one with nature and represents Dorothy's connection to the physical and natural world. So he plays a really important role, but because he doesn't speak the way the other characters do, he doesn't get as much attention, but he's really quite significant. The ruby slippers are a supernaturally empowered pair of shoes, really, and according to Glinda, give the wearer the capacity to fulfill her desires. So that, coupled with the mantra she gives her, "There's no place like home," gives her the ability to get back to where she wants to go, which is where she started. The Wizard of Oz, the hero journey, as I said, it really starts where you are, goes somewhere to learn something, and then to come back and bring that back into the world that you've been in, that you lived in, but now with greater meaning. And really, in America, for many, many years, baseball was the national pastime. And I think the reason for that is that it represents the same metaphor. You start at home, you got to get to first base, second base, third base, and then come back home again. In other words, you end up where you started, but now something has changed. You've scored a run. And if your pitching is really good, you shut the team out. One run is enough to win. So whenever people see this metaphor of starting at home, going somewhere, and then coming back home again in a more exalted, more awakened manner, it stirs us. It touches those deepest parts of ourselves, because what that is an archetypal representation of our own journeys, which start in the infancy and the oneness of infancy, through the duality of adult life. And if we are wise and embark consciously on the spiritual journey we're intended to take, we return to an enlightened state, which combines the duality of adult life with the innocence and oneness that we knew as infants, but in a more expanded manner.
Yeah, I love that elaboration, Cary. So also, as you were speaking, that's such a beautiful metaphor and analogy, like coming from source and then going back to source, kind of like returning from where you came in. And to me, I keep seeing like a circle, because it completes itself. And it seems like the overall message of the Yoga of Oz with you, and then also, in the actual story itself, is that our journey here, and let me know your insights in just a moment, is really to know that we have it all. That what we think we're actually lacking, whatever that might be, And it was beautifully illustrated as you spoke about what it was for Dorothy. And I think a lot of us, can relate to those things. But whatever that is that we're lacking, we actually have, it resides within ourselves. So there really is no need to look outside. It's all basically, inherently within us. So do you feel that that is literally the purpose of every single person? And if that is accomplished, do you feel that that ends the cycle of reincarnation? What's your whole view on all that?
Well, that was a mouthful. Yes. The short answer is yes. We're here to take a journey, a spiritual journey. We're all in bodies to gain that high state of consciousness known as enlightenment or liberation, in which we recognize that we're more than just our bodies, we're more than just our minds, our thoughts, our feelings. We are ultimately spiritual beings having a human experience. That's the truth of life. And until we learn that and discover that consciously, not just intellectually, because we know it intellectually, but until we experience that and live from that place, reincarnation is a fact. Now, once we have gained that state of enlightenment, there's no need for reincarnation. So I want to read that quote from T.S. Eliot one more time, because like whoever's listening to this, listen so closely, because there is so much wisdom in these a dozen or so words. The end of all our exploring is to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time. That's it. I mean, Dorothy, when she left Kansas, she was unhappy. She was really, she was despondent. But when she returned, her heart was full. She looked all around her and she saw love. And she felt connected to all the people because she had gained a metaphorical enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that awakened heart is so beautiful, and how that really, brought everything into perspective. Take us a little further down the yellow brick road into the journey of the Yoga of Oz in your book, and tell us what else you touch upon in your book.
Sure. In the introduction, there's a paragraph I'd like to read. It says, by the title of this book, The Yoga of Oz, Meditations for Your Yellow Brick Road, I don't want you to imagine the rusty tin man putting a mat down on those yellow bricks and contorting his stiff metal limbs into hatha yoga positions. The word yoga is a Sanskrit one, meaning yoke or uniting. And what is Dorothy's adventure if not one of uniting? There's her uniting with three strangers on her journey, a scarecrow, a tin man, and a lion. There's the uniting of each of them to their higher natures, the scarecrow, his intelligence, the tin man, his compassionate heart, and the scaredy cat lion, his courage. There's also her uniting back with her family in Kansas after nearly dying in the land of Oz. Of course, all of this is a metaphor for her uniting with her higher nature as well. And again, I think one of the reasons this story is so captivating for people is because it is demonstrating in an artistic manner the journey that we're all on, because all of us are looking for enlightenment, whether we realize it or not. We're looking for happiness, and what enlightenment is ultimate happiness. It's the awakening of the bliss within us. So when we become enlightened, we live from that state, that place where bliss consciousness resides. So every desire that we have is for more happiness. Whether we know it or not, we're all looking for that state of being. Most people don't know that that's what they're looking for. They think that if they can get that next promotion at work, or if they can get that certain car or that certain home or whatever it is they desire, that it will give them happiness. And to some extent, it will give them some short-term happiness. But lasting happiness is not found in the world of change. And the world of change is the world we're familiar with. In Florida, the weather doesn't change much, but of course we know that there are 4 seasons and there are changes to our bodies and changes to the environment and so forth. There is, however, a place in us that does not change, and that's a state of being. It's transcendent to the mind. Transcendent, of course, means beyond. It's beyond the changing thoughts of the mind, beyond the changing feelings of the heart, beyond the changing perceptions of the senses. is this state of being. And that's the white light. That's the over the rainbow that Dorothy seeks. And in the wonderful song Over the Rainbow, she says, she speaks of desiring to find a place, she says, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. So that's really what she's seeking. And again, I don't know if the movie makers and the songwriters were as conscious as the author of the book, but they sure did a fantastic job connecting to the spirituality inherent in the story. Because the author, L. Frank Baum, was, as I said earlier, spiritually awakened to all of this. The songwriter, the lyricist, the screenwriters, the directors, I don't know to what extent they were, but they sure found deep inspiration, because this story has been captivating us for the over 80 years now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And just as you've been speaking about, your book and the whole story unfolding of the Wizard of Oz, I'm really starting to see it's really steeped and drenched in so much metaphorical analogies and steeped in, I mean, in a sense, an element of mystery, but yet if you dive deep into it, it becomes apparent. So it's not so mysterious, but it has so much depth to it, and there's so many ways to interpret it. And I was kind of going through that in my awareness as you were speaking about that. So we get a good feeling for the characters and what they represent and how that relates to all of our journeys on the human level, spiritually and practically. And that once we arrive at this awakened state, this enlightened state, it's kind of like, okay, it's like, it's kind of like game over. It's like, okay,
No, game begin.
you feel like, okay, okay. But,
In fact,
but, but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I just want to, no, I want to hear what you have to say, but in terms of, and let me know your thoughts on an earth presence, once we reach that state of enlightenment, in terms of our earth presence in our physical body, and again, going back to reincarnation, you don't feel like that's game over.
No.
You feel like it's okay, just beginning, okay.
Yeah. In fact, I was there when Maharishi was asked that question. And someone, paraphrasing it slightly, they said, is self-realization the end of life? He says, no, it's the beginning of life. Because it's because finally we have found what we've been looking for all these years. We have found the peace, we have found the joy, so that life takes on so much more richness when you're awake and when you're happy and when you're peaceful and joyful. Then the fulfillment of desires adds a certain extra layer of joy. In fact, Maharishi used to call it 200% of life, 100% of the inner spiritual and 100% of the outer material. We don't need one we don't have to sacrifice one for the other. So, instead of, so many people who think, as I said moments ago, that if they got that certain car, they'd just be so satisfied. And yet they discover that didn't give them what they thought it would, because it's not intended to. It's just a car. What they're looking for is a state of being, and you're not going to find it in the metal of that car. You're not going to find it in the bricks in your home or the wood in your home. It's in the non-physical that is the basis for life. I have a couple of paragraphs, if you'd like, I could read here that I think might, okay. Also from the introduction, I doubt that you walk on yellow bricks or bump into witches all that often, but I'm sure that your courage, compassion, and smarts are put to the test on a daily basis. You've heard your soul's yearnings, perhaps tried to walk your yellow brick road with a therapist, a workshop leader, a coach, or a guru. Such guides accelerate journeys by opening hearts, firming up courage, inspiring intelligence, maybe even awakening the self that underlies them all. As a hero journeyer's guide, this book teaches you to understand your growth, how to persevere when things are dark, how to stay well-rounded and well-grounded, and how to avoid pitfalls that could beset you on your way. It tells you what to bring, what you'll likely encounter, and what to watch out for. When you dust off your copy of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the word wonderful was removed for the movie and subsequent editions of the book. Or you queue up the movie, you'll see Baum's roadmap for your quest. The Wizard of Oz is one of the most beloved films ever, and one of the reasons that it abounds with insights that can enlighten your mind, heal your emotions, and awaken your spirit. Dorothy's adventures over the rainbow are a metaphor for your inner journey and for your inner spiritual journey as well. I'm sorry, it's a metaphor for her inner journey and yours as well. The spiritual journey is an interior one. Seeing the plot of the film helps to externalize it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout the book, I also give, in most chapters, almost every chapter has what I call an exercise, which is a kind of a process or a visualization or some inner exercise that the reader can practice to help awaken something. So for example, in the chapter on consciousness, there's a technique to help awaken consciousness. In the chapter on the Tin Man, there's a technique to help purify your heart. For the lion, a technique to help awaken your courage and so forth. So I've designed the book as a kind of user's manual, a very user-friendly guide. That's why it's subtitled Meditations for Your Yellow Brick Road, because we're on our yellow brick road, whether we realize it or not. And the meditations, affirmations, visualizations, exercises are there to help awaken us so that we can further progress on our journeys.
Mm-hmm. I love that. The exercise at the end of each chapter. Take us, Cary, into one of those exercises, from one of the main characters that Dorothy encounters, and share that with us, because that's really like on the practical level. So we have the spiritual and then we have the practical, something that we can actually apply.
Okay. So, here's a short one. It's called The Root Out of Routine. On a sheet of paper, write down without judgment the dreary parts of your life, the black and white routines devoid of excitement. Perhaps it's your job, your friends, maybe even your marriage or sex life. This is the Kansas from which you want to be liberated. So that sets up a kind of beginning of where it is that you feel stuck or blocked, as Dorothy was. She felt stuck in Kansas. There's also okay, here's one. The wizard is someone who Dorothy and really everybody in the story projects on. Projecting is a psychological phenomenon where we see something good in others, and sometimes also something bad in others that's really in us, but we don't recognize it, so we project it onto them. In fact, when Toto draws the curtain and we discover the wizard is really a charlatan, he says, "Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain," right? Toto helps us to take back the projections that we had on the wizard. So this exercise is called "Taking Back Your Projections." It's a chapter on projection, and so it says, with pen in hand, write down on a piece of paper the names of people who you project on now or have projected on in the past. What are the positive qualities that you see more in them that you don't see in yourself? Once you do this, isolate those qualities and begin to keep a nightly journal in which you record examples from each day where you express those qualities. So for example, give me an example of someone in your life. Well, either in your personal life who you know, or someone who you've never met, who you think is a wonderful being.
Do you want me to name somebody?
Yeah, just one person. Yeah.
That is currently here on Earth.
Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be.
I would say Jesus.
Perfect example. Okay, great. He's probably the most projectable character we have. He obviously embodied fantastic qualities. But the truth is, you see those qualities in him because they also exist in you. If you were a thief, criminal, murderer, you wouldn't see those things in Jesus. You'd see him very differently. When I was a boy, and I used to hang around in the schoolyards growing up, playing with my friends. And from time to time, when one boy would like to dish on another, he'd make an insult. He'd insult him in some way. And the boy who'd been insulted used to say, "It takes one to know one." I don't know if you've ever heard that expression before,
Sure.
but it's a tremendous piece of wisdom, because we can't see something in another unless it's in us. So give me an example of what it is in Jesus, few qualities of his that you find so inspiring.
Well, the Christ love, the Christ light, and then embodying that.
Okay, so this exercise would then have you, write those things down that we just discussed, and then would ask you to keep a journal and give expression on a nightly basis to whenever you express that kind of love. And what it does is, it's like any exercise makes, I just came back from the gym a little while ago. And when you go to the gym, you exercise muscles, you strengthen muscles simply by repeating some exercises. It's the repetition of the exercises that strengthens the muscles. We all have the Christ love in us, but in some, it's more, let's just say, rusty than in others, like that Tin Man, a little rusty. But the exercise of, in this case, keeping a journal of how and when you express that love in your life, what that does is it chips off the rust, and as an exercise strengthens the muscle of that Christ love that's within you. So it's not as if it's not in Jesus. Of course it's there, but it's also in you. And what happens through this exercise is it gets stronger and stronger in you.
Mm-hmm.
You begin to become more, you separate, you narrow the distance between where you are in your mind and where Jesus is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See?
Yeah, I like that. And I love the whole idea that you've interjected in the book with the exercises to kind of balance everything out. So, as we've been saying, there's, the spiritual, metaphysical, and also the practical aspects. Um, but before we kind of get into one other area in your book, one of the things that I've always thought, Cary, in terms of the man behind the curtain who is a charlatan, is that I always thought that kind of represented the ego and kind of like letting us know without directly saying it, about the illusionary qualities. It is really nothing, but yet it really drives us, on so many levels, and until we work through that. So, in terms of viewing it like that, and just kind of getting rid of like the Maya and all the illusion in the world and that which is, not eternal and that which is not actually the truth and the reality of, as you have beautifully been saying, the state of our being. What about that, kind of pairing that together with that whole behind the curtain, just, blowing that out of the water, so to speak?
Sure. The ego is a wonderful servant and a terrible master. And the wizard clearly demonstrates that. He uses all kinds of special effects and all kinds of tricks to hoodwink others into thinking he's got all the power. The ego is not a bad thing. It's really it all it really is our sense of our individuality. But if it becomes so seductive that we think that's all there is, then what we do is we build up our individuality and forget about the universal in us. And it's the universal in us, that peaceful place, that beautiful, serene, blissful place that is the foundation of the ego. So again, when that true self, higher self with a capital S awakens, the ego with a small self, S, serves as the master. Serves the master of our true nature, because it's necessary to be to have an individuality. Without an individuality, we can't really exist in this world. So, what we truly are universal individuals. That's what we really are. But the ego makes us think that all we are is an individual. You're different from me. You have this skill, I don't, and so forth, and all the comparisons between individuals that the ego tends to make, forgetting that it's really the ego is designed as a sort of an intermediary that allows us to move about the world from the awakened, enlightened position, because we need a body, we need senses to engage in the world, and the ego that's what the ego is there for. But if we forget that, or we're blind to that, or we become amnesiac to our true nature, then the ego runs amok and creates all kinds of, you use the word Maya, which is a Sanskrit term for illusion, absolutely, runs into all kinds of illusions. So it's not as if the world is an illusion. It's not as if material things are meaningless. It's not as if the ego is a bad thing. It's just that it needs to have its proper place, and its proper place is to serve the universal in us, to serve the higher power. And when we do that, then our lives just take off, you know, in those hot air balloons, so to speak, but destined for something really good, you know.
I love everything that you're sharing, Cary. Soon we're going to need to kind of wrap up the show, but let's dive into something about your book, The Yoga of Oz, that we haven't gotten into.
Okay. Let me find a piece here. Yeah, okay. The wizard, even though he's anything but, is clear and wise enough to realize something that none of Dorothy's three journeying friends could see, even though it was right in front of them or within them, namely, that each of them already possessed the very thing he thought he needed. This book will help enlighten your mind, heal your emotions, and awaken your spirit. Through a journaling process, you'll locate the missed gulches in your life who you've chosen to resist, only to find them reappearing as someone else who you also couldn't get along with. Through an enlightened completion process, you'll be shown how to make peace with those so-called wicked shadow figure. This will give you not only peace, but usually a surprise bonus from your inner Glinda. Sometimes it's more prosperity, sometimes it's new and improved relationships, sometimes it's better health, sometimes it's all three. Finally, you'll discover, like Dorothy did, not to pay attention to the man behind the curtain. In other words, how to take back the projections you placed on teachers, gurus, and others whom you put on pedestals and to whom you've given away your power. This gives you added power. You'll also learn a process to help you move past the doubts that stop you in your life. This gives you added freedom. So I've designed, again, as I say, the movie is designed to wake us up to the inner journey we're on in a musical and comic and adventurous way. And this book is a kind of a parallel to that. It's designed to help us see the spirituality inherent in this great journey story, and also provide exercises and tools that allow us to more consciously walk the journey we're on. For some people, it might make them realize, wait a second, I hadn't realized I'm on an inner journey. Great. For those who are advanced already on that journey, they'll learn a whole variety of exercises and techniques that can take them much deeper and much further, and realize, as Dorothy did, that there really is no place like home.
Yes, I love the whole organization of your book, and I love the message, and that you've taken the time to, to write this, and basing it on something that we're so familiar about. We do need to wrap this show up, Cary, so we'd like to offer you the closing comments, and then if you can please let us know how we can stay in touch with you.
Sure, thank you very much, appreciate that. Well, my website is probably a good place for people to visit. It's www.carybayer.com. That's my name, carybayer.com. You can reach me by email, and my email address is successaerobics, that's plural, aerobics @aol.com. I gave that name years ago because essentially I designed exercises, inner exercises for people to succeed in the various parts of their lives. And you can even call me by phone. My cell is 845-664-1883. You can see on my website a variety of classes. In fact, classes. I teach classes on spirituality, on relationships, on prosperity, communication, even overcoming procrastination, a whole range of kinds of classes now on Zoom.
Yes. Cary, thank you so much for sharing your book with us and your insights and for, having us get to know you and all that you shared with us. Thank you so much. Much success with your book and stay connected with us and then let us know of all your future endeavors. I know you have a lot of things going on.
Well, thank you. It's really a pleasure. And it's so nice to speak to someone who has such an enchanted background behind her, too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Cary.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone, for watching today. Again, we appreciate the time you take to watch Art and Talk. And we'll talk soon on the next Art and Talk. Until then, be well and be blessed.